Hey everyone, welcome back. Are you tired of juggling a million different configuration files every time you deploy your Spring Boot app? Do you dream of a world where switching between dev, test, and production is as easy as flipping a switch? Well, dream no more. Today, we're unlocking a secret weapon in the Spring Boot arsenal, Spring Profiles. This isn't just another feature, it's a game changer. Think about it, you're in development, happily coding away with your lightweight H2 database and local files. Life is good. But then, production looms. Suddenly, you're wrestling with Oracle, cloud storage, and a whole new set of configurations. Sound familiar? Spring Profiles are here to rescue you from configuration chaos. They let you create separate profiles for each environment, dev, test, prod, each with its own perfectly tailored settings. No more manual edits, no more deployment nightmares. Your application magically adapts to its surroundings, picking the right configuration every single time. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to wield this powerful tool. We'll dive into setting up profiles, switching between them effortlessly, and unleashing the full potential of Spring Boot. Get ready to level up your deployment game and say goodbye to configuration headaches. Let's do this. Today, we're diving into an awesome topic: how to inject different configuration values based on the active Spring profile. Imagine this: while developing locally, you work with one set of configurations, and when you push your app to production, Spring Boot automatically switches to a completely different setup tailored just for that environment. It's like having a smart configuration switch at your fingertips. And that's not all. In our next video, we'll kick it up a notch by showing you how to create entirely different beans based on the active profile. Picture this: using local file storage during development and switching to robust cloud storage like S3 in production. But for now, we're zeroing in on how to load those varying values into our configuration properties using Spring Profiles. Let's jump in and see this magic in action. Alright everyone, let's create our next class, Profile Demo Controller. Annotate this class with @REST_controller. Inside this controller, we're going to declare a variable called appVariable of type string. This variable will get its value injected using the @value annotation with the key app message. We'll use constructor injection to set this up. Ensuring that we can have different values for app message depending on the active Spring profile. Next, we'll create a Get API endpoint that simply returns this message. Follow along as I do this on screen. Alright, now let's open our application.yaml file. Add a new property called appMessage and set its value to welcome to default profile. This way, when no specific profile is active, you'll see this default message being picked up. It's a great way to clearly indicate where the value is coming from. Alright, now here's a burning question: how do we manage different configuration values for environments like dev, prod, and QA? Alright, here's where Spring Boot really makes your life easier. Managing environment-specific configurations is a breeze. All you need to do is create separate configuration files following a simple naming convention, application-profilename.yaml or application-profilename.properties. For example, if your active profile is dev, your file should be named either application-dev.yaml or application-dev.properties. If your active profile is local, your file should be named either application-local.yaml or application-local.properties. Now here's the fun part. If you need a specific value for your dev environment that's different from the default, just copy the key into your application dev YAML file and set it to the desired value. Spring Boot prioritizes these profile-specific settings over the default configuration, ensuring that your application always picks up the right values for each environment. It's like having a custom setup for every stage of your app's journey. No more manual tweaks before every deployment. Alright everyone, it's time to level up our configuration. We're going to create two separate profile configurations, one for dev and another for prod. Creating a new configuration file named applicationdev.yaml. In this file, we'll include all the settings that are specific to our development environment. Alright everyone, let's make one of our configuration values profile specific. We only want our app message property to change when we're in the dev environment, while everything else stays as default. So in our applicationdev.yaml file, we're going to add the app message key and set its value to welcome to dev profile. This means that whenever the dev profile is active, Spring Boot will override the default message with this custom one. Alright, now that we've nailed the dev profile. In the same way, we'll create a new configuration file for our prod profile. In our application-prod.yaml file, we're going to change the value of app message to welcome to production profile. Alright, here's an interesting question. How do we activate a specific profile in Spring Boot? How do we tell it which configuration to use? Spring Boot makes switching configurations a breeze with a handy property called spring.profiles.active. Just set this property to, say, dev or prod, and Spring Boot will load the corresponding profile-specific configuration file. For example, if you set spring.profiles.active equals dev, Spring Boot automatically loads the settings from applicationdev.yaml. It's that simple. Alright, here's where it gets really interesting. You can actually activate multiple profiles at once using the spring.profiles.active property. For example, if you set spring.profiles.active equals dev, Oracle, Spring Boot will set both the dev and Oracle profiles. Alright, now let's open our application.yaml file. And set spring.profiles.active to dev, just like I'm doing on my screen. Follow along to ensure your configuration is set up correctly. Alright, it's time to start the application. Alright, our application is up and running. Now, let's switch over to Postman. And hit our new API endpoint that we created. Boom! Check this out. Right on my screen we see the response, "Welcome to Dev Profile." This means our dev profile is active and everything is working perfectly. It's proof that our configuration is spot on. Great job everyone, Spring Boot is doing exactly what we expect, and our app is now perfectly tuned for the dev environment. Here's a little challenge. By setting our profiles in application to YAML, You might think that every time you deploy to a different environment, you'd have to change your config file and rebuild your app. But guess what? That's not necessary at all. Spring Boot lets you override that setting externally. You can set the active profile using a Java environment property or a VM argument when running your application. This means you can keep your build intact and simply switch profiles on the fly.
Pretty cool, right?
Alright, now let's open our run configuration in IntelliJ. As you can see on my screen. Scroll down to the environment variable section. Here, you'll find an option to set environment variables. We need to add one for activating our profile.
Type in
spring_profiles_active equals prod.
Then, click Apply.
This tells Spring Boot to use the prod profile when running your application. Alright, let's start the application. Alright folks, check out these logs. Look at that, Spring Boot is telling us exactly which profile is active, and it's showing that the prod profile is in use.
Now, let's switch over to Postman and hit our API.
Look at that, check out the response. We got welcome to production profile because we set our active profile to prod in our run configuration. This confirms that our environment variable setup is working perfectly, and Spring Boot is loading the right configuration for production. Alright folks, now that we've set the active profile using environment variables, let's switch things up and see another cool method, using VM options. First, open your run configuration again. Remove the environment variable we set earlier. And then go to the More Options section to add a new VM option.
Type in
spring.profiles.active equals prod. This tells the JVM to activate the prod profile when you run your application. It's another slick way to control your configuration without modifying your files. Alright, let's start the application. Look at these logs, everyone. They clearly show that the active profile is set to prod, which means our VM option is working perfectly.
hit our API.
And there it is, as you can see on my screen, the response is exactly as expected. This confirms that our configuration is working perfectly.
Great job, everyone.
Alright folks, that wraps up today's deep dive into Spring Profiles. We've seen how to activate profiles using environment variables and VM options, and how Spring Boot picks up the right configuration for the active profile. The logs confirmed that our production profile is up and running exactly as expected. In our next video, we'll take things a step further and explore how to create different beans based on the active profile, for example, having one bean for local file storage in development and another for cloud storage in production. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this session, don't forget to hit that notification bell, subscribe, and stay tuned for more awesome content. See you in the next one.